Would you have been able to recognize Kaitlin Armstrong if you saw her? Since hearing about Kaitlin Armstrong's surgery, we've all been waiting to get a glimpse of Kaitlin since she was captured and arrested, and now that she's been brought to Texas to stand trial and face up to the charges against her. Did you notice while on the run just how few photos there were of Kaitlin, and of the few that were out there, most were poor quality? Well, that's what happens when a suspect disables or deletes their social media. The one photo we did see repeatedly in the news was this one. Take a close look at Kaitlin's nose. If there's one idiosyncratic feature about her face, it's her nose. The top half is narrow, while the bottom is wide. All in all, as fugitives go, Kaitlin's probably the most attractive, high-profile fugitive we've seen in recent years. Frustratingly, despite Kaitlin's arrival back in the States, she's been hiding her face behind lots of dark hair and a COVID mask. The views we've had that weren't from behind were fleeting or partial. The Harris County Sheriff's Office has since provided a clear photo of Kaitlin's face, maskless, from the front, showing Kaitlin's altered appearance. So here's the question. If you saw her, do you think you would have recognized her? But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So this is what Kaitlin looks like now. It looks like the main difference to her nose was that she narrowed the bottom part of it. Does her appearance seem much altered otherwise to you? Now, the part that's quite interesting is that Kaitlin hasn't altered her appearance much. She's dyed her hair, she's cut it, but it's still long and wavy. The style of her hair is still quite similar, and bear in mind, during high school, she was voted best hair. So Kaitlin obviously was quite attached to her tresses, and I guess still is. The other thing to note is that despite deleting her own social media, and in spite of her sister Christine and Colin Strickland having a few images of Kaitlin still out there online on their social media, and despite Kaitlin's Facebook page still being discoverable, in many of the available images she's either dressed in cycling garb or the photos are quite dated, meaning it's still quite difficult to recognize her from the available photos. Something else to consider is whether Kaitlin changed her appearance so that she more closely resembled her sister. Bear in mind she's got her sister's passport. Well, have a look at the lower part of Christine's nose. I think if you've been confidently putting up your hand and saying, I would have recognized her, the fact remains that while being on the run for 6 weeks, 43 days, and despite this being such a high-profile case, no one did. No one recognized her from her face. No one recognized her from her appearance. No passengers, no hostel guests, no airline hostess, no one at immigration, no bus or taxi driver. What gave Kaitlin away was the evidence trail she left behind, which is to say a paper trail, perhaps a combination of a paper trail and some CCTV bingos here and there. So think about the ticketing, the sign-ins, the signatures, and that is when she boarded flights, buses, or checked into hostels. All of that gave her away. In other words, that thin fabric of society that she nevertheless participated in, that is what cost her her freedom. Probably more than anything, what gave her away was her name, more specifically, her surname. This raises the question, if Kaitlin had traveled on a phony passport, I mean completely phony, a new identity, a new name, would the authorities have found her then? I'm guessing that those in the business of forged travel documents can't turn around that sort of thing in 4 days. And I think Kaitlin was in a rush to skip town and the country before the dragnet closed in. Had she waited for a fake passport, she may have been caught somewhere near the Haven. Think about that. Something else to note, Colin Strickland has recently, in the past day or so, removed the final references to sponsors and amended his bio. Take a look. He also, perhaps a little snarkily, refers to himself as someone who, quote, used to ride bicycles, end quote, and now exists simply to be pilloried. All the references to Red Bull are gone, although at present Strickland still appears on redbull.com as a featured athlete. We've also heard nothing in the news about Red Bull officially cancelling or terminating their sponsorship with Colin Strickland. But possibly that may change in the next few days. Meanwhile, bond has been set for Strickland's girlfriend at $3.5 million. According to CBS, quote, Kaitlin Armstrong must also surrender her passport prior to release and will be GPS monitored, according to court records from Travis County. Well, we know that Kaitlin doesn't actually have her passport. Her passports, plural, were actually left at the hostel, but one presumes the authorities have requested them, or it has been couriered to them or sent to them. And so now we await word on the legal journey that awaits Kaitlin, including when and where her next court appearance will be. One imagines Kaitlin will be searching for a good defense lawyer right now, and perhaps trying to sell some of her properties in order to be able to pay for a proper defense. So I'm not going to take it further than that, but there is one more photo that I want to draw your attention to. I'm a photographer, and just these kind of details sometimes speak 1,000 words. Sometimes a photo is a way of saying more than intended in some very appropriate ways. I love how this photo from, ABC 13, I love how it says lost and found in black and white over her shoulder, on her left shoulder side. Obviously Kaitlin herself was lost, and she's recently been found again. There's something weirdly gratuitous about Kaitlin doing what she did, then going to all the effort and expense, only to end up back where it all started. Incidentally, the footage is from the Houston airport, not Austin, so she has some ways, at the time that this photo was taken, she had some ways to go yet. I think the obvious question is, if she could peek into the future at the moment she sees the Sig Sauer, for example, if she could see this photo, almost like a postcard, coming through the ether, at the moment that she took the Sig Sauer and she was marching towards the door that Mo was standing behind, if she could see this image, would she have proceeded regardless? If she knew the outcome, she had to have anticipated that she might have gotten caught. But this is also the problem, I feel, with us. We can't imagine outcomes clearly, colorfully, and with enough detail in our everyday lives. We're not realistic generally as a society, as individuals. And because of a failure of imagination, such a simple thing, a failure just to imagine in enough detail, to take enough time just to imagine what could happen, we take risks that we ought to know better not to. Imagination, anticipation, living in the real world seems to be a basic skill. We ignore it at our own peril. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.